Hey, howdy, all you beautiful motherfuckers, and welcome back to the $2 Film Club, where you guys get your daily, not daily, but weekly dose of really bad takes and just mediocre opinions. Maybe, maybe that's how we should
And
start
it's
the
mostly
shows
from
off
the bad
now.
takes are mostly from your side.
Okay, let's relax. I'm not going to disagree because I feel like I got a lot of hot takes, but I don't think they're that bad. I don't know.
No, they're not. No.
I feel
You
like
and me have both
this.
put some interesting things on.
I feel like me and you actually agree more often than we disagree on things, or at least like when we disagree too, we're not terribly too far off.
Yeah.
But I think with this franchise, the Silent Hill movies, I think we'll have like an interesting conversation because typically when we talk about like video game adaptations into film franchises, they're usually, I'm not saying the first or the second one are good films, but I think when it comes to like video game adaptations, this was made in the time, or at least the first one, Silent Hill back in 2006, was like made in the time when studios didn't care enough to interfere with the project. And I think you see more of that with the second one.
Mhm.
But we're talking about the two films, Silent Hill and Silent Hill Revelations 3D, another mid early 2010 film horror franchise that needed to go the 3D route, and it makes the film look far worse than it needed to. But neither here or there. We're talking about the two films because I think in like 2 weeks from now, a new film, Return to Silent Hill, is coming out with the same director as the original Silent Hill film from 2006. It's not like a direct sequel, but it's like an anthology type film because I don't know if you caught this at the end of Revelations. Spoilers, by the way, for both films. Uh, I'm just going to get that out there now before we
Yeah, I
figure out
don't think
a
anyone
more
cares.
strategic way. I don't know if you recognize this in the second film, Revelations, but they mention how like there's many Silent Hills. So after watching that film only like a few hours ago, I find it funny just finding out now that this is kind of like an anthology series he wants to kind of turn it into. So that inherently makes me a little bit more interested outside of Christophe Gans like coming back to direct the sequel, or like not sequel but anthology sequel, I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed it. I didn't know what any of it like because there's like some sequel bait at the end of the second one. Other than that as well, but I figured that was the direction it was going because the ending. I mean, the ending of the first one was kind of definitive, but obviously that didn't really matter when they got to Revelation. But I correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not an anthology in the games, right? I read a synopsis of the first three,
So
given how
I'll be honest, this is back when like I was growing up. I don't know if people would say the same, but it felt very much you either played like the Resident Evil franchise or Silent Hill, where they're not the same game, but they're the same concept, and it's a survival horror where you're making your way through this town where like monsters are kind of chasing you, and they both have this big broody villain that you can't shoot in the game, i.e. in Silent Hill, it's Pyramid Head, where he'll just like kind of chase you and you have to hide or just run away in order to get rid of him. Um, in Resident Evil, why am I blanking on the name of the character? But it's like this big necro. You see him in the second film, like
oh
more,
yeah, I know.
yeah,
What's it called? Now I can't remember.
with the
As
minigun.
as soon as you said it, I couldn't fucking remember. What's the
So
second one?
so regard um no, not Afterlife. That's the fifth one
Man,
because
what the
they
fuck
both
is the name?
the sequel to the Revelations,
Apocalypse. That's what it's
Apocalypse,
called.
the best Resident Evil film. Weapon X, I think it's called.
mm,
The
what
Punisher,
the
no.
fuck is
Oh
it
my
called?
god,
Oh my god.
I played all the games you'd think I'd remember at this point,
We're gonna
but
fucking
regardless, they all have like the same basis for
Nemesis.
Nemesis. That's it. The Nemesis and Pyramid Head are similar villains in their respective franchises, where you have to just kind of like run away from him and you can't kill him unless it's like a typical boss fight. And
Mm.
so I was like more on the Resident Evil side. I never played much Resident or Silent Hill outside of the first game, but the first two games were the same overlapping story that the first Silent Hill film doesn't take, outside of it being a parent losing their child in Silent Hill. And if I remember correctly, the main character, the father in the first game, was like a cop or something. So you could see how like they took inspiration a little bit. But outside of that, I don't really remember, outside of like the villains, the storyline.
I mean, based on the synopsis that I read, it's very similar. Like the plot beats are like obviously different things kind of happen, and they like gender swapped and changed some of the names. But for the most part, I want to say and again, this is just off of reading a synopsis. The first movie is much more inspired by the first game, but includes like certain elements from the second one, so Silent Hill 2. Obviously, Return to Silent Hill is more of like a direct adaptation of that game, and then Silent Hill Revelation takes more from Silent Hill 3, which is like a direct continuation of the first Silent Hill game, again from what I read from the synopsis. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of my thing, and what I thought about telling you this before we jumped on here, but I guess since we got to it, I'll just say it now. My main problem with these movies is that they're trying really hard to adapt the games, but also not really at the same time, because like you can tell that the director of the first one had a really deep connection to the games and was passionate about bringing them to the silver screen or whatever. But then at the same time, when you're like looking at like what the actual game is about, there's like key differences that are like they slightly changed character motivations and stuff like that. And so that leads us into Silent Hill Revelation, which was helmed by a completely different person and is taking a lot more from the Silent Hill 3 game, which doesn't really work with the way that Silent Hill from 2006 is set up, which is just really
Well, they
odd
don't
to
set
me.
anything up. That's the problem, because it's just so obvious they didn't intend to make anything past that. But then the studio was like,
Yeah.
you know what? It felt like the time during the early 2010s where that horror, like, kind of cultural impact was coming back. I don't know what it was. In 2010, there was a kind of drastic shift, I felt, leading up for the last 15 years, that just made horror like a much bigger cultural and like want than I think it was in like the 90s and early 2000s. And I
Yeah.
think this was like a part of that trend.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I want to say that Silent Hill Revelation is bad because it pretty much loses everything about the first one that was actually like somewhat decent. But then at the same time, I can't be all that mad about it because the plot synopsis matches what I'm reading about the game. So like they're going out of their way to try and include stuff that's actually from the game that it's based on, but because they changed so many things, not so many things, but because they changed like essential small things in adapting the first game, it doesn't match with what is actually in the game that the second one is based on, if that makes sense. I'm trying to say this in the simplest way possible, but they're all called the same thing and it's really difficult. Anyways, so that's kind of my things that like obviously I can tell that Christoph Gans really cared about the project, but then he made like little changes for some reason and I don't understand why, and that just made it much harder, I think, on the people who are making the sequel. And yeah, there's definitely like, I don't want to say that that's sort of the be all end all for making Revelation a good movie, because I don't think it is. There's lots of other things that I don't really like about that movie, and we'll get into that. But I don't think it helped either and so I'm very stuck on, how I should feel about that.
Yeah, I agree with you. When I've seen Silent Hill like a few times. This isn't like the first time I've seen it. This is the
Yeah.
first time I'd watched them back to back, which I thought was an interesting experience. But coming back to Silent Hill, I always think like it goes to the same issues you have with the story, that like they don't really want to take enough from the video games, but they don't do enough inherently with making it its own at the same time. But
Mm.
at the same time, what you were saying, Christoph Gans cares so much about the games that I kind of get entrapped a little bit with Silent Hill, that doesn't matter as much to me, I feel, because personally I thought the acting was pretty good in this movie. At least when what's the I gotta put up the thing for the first Silent Hill. I have to look up the actress for the child.
Oh,
And
fuck, what's her name? Laurie Holden. No, that's not it.
no, that's the cop. Who, by the way, love Laurie Holden.
Sorry,
She's
Jodelle Ferland. I hope I'm saying that name right.
yeah,
Jodelle
Jodelle
Ferland.
Ferland. I tend to I don't want to say be nicer because I don't think that's the proper word, but I think it sticks out when a actor is better than most kid actors, and I thought that Jodelle Ferland did a really good job for what I thought was required of her, playing the two different like versions of Alessa, right? Like I don't know how else to say that, because whenever she popped up as Alessa and like she had that dark makeup on, I found her to be quite like terrifying. Not terrifying, but creepy.
Like
Like I
sinister
don't know.
looking. Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I didn't personally find her that compelling, but they don't really give her much to do, and obviously you have to curb some of your criticisms because they are like a small child. I've seen her in other things. She's been in
Yeah,
quite a
where have I seen her, bro?
dude, she's been in a
I'm
shit
like,
ton of stuff.
it's
Okay,
funny
I'm
you say
not
that because
making that up.
I thought I was saying, I thought I said to myself to the movie, like, what had I seen her in Jodelle
She's
Ferland?
been in like a handful of fucking horror films. I mentioned this in our end of the year list thing. She was in The Messengers, that movie with Kristen
She was
Stewart.
in the cabin in the woods.
It says she was. I don't remember seeing her, but it's possible she played one of like the monsters or something, and we just like it was like sort of a blink and you'll miss it part. But she was in the Twilight Saga Eclipse. She played the character Bree Tanner, which, if I'm remembering correctly, is the like teenage vampire that we kind of see like a lot of. Like, do you remember what happens in that movie?
Sadly.
Okay, so like she's like a newborn vampire or
Yeah,
whatever,
I remember.
and she's
She matures really fast, so a certain person can like.
no, it's
Yeah.
just like she's one of the vampires that we kind of like focus on whenever it shifts perspective to like the gang of
Oh
like
yeah, I think I
newborns
know
or
what you're
whatever, and
talking
then
about.
she dies at the end or whatever. Sorry, that was a really long-winded way of explaining that. I just didn't know how to say it. Anyways, but people will probably recognize her from that. She was in another movie called Case 39, which is a horror film. I've seen clips of that, and she's very creepy in it, I will say.
I
Um,
can't. I don't remember her being in The Messengers, bro. I'd seen that movie a bunch of times.
I think it's also a small role. If I'm remembering correctly, she plays like the child that's murdered or something.
That's right. That's right.
It's not a movie that is particularly, I would say,
Good.
important to remember.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it.
I'm trying to see if I can find an image or something of her, but I'm not. I don't know. It's hard to explain the plot of this movie too, because I think her role in it is confined to like some flashbacks towards the end, which reveals the bullshit twist in it. I had a very difficult time watching this movie. Anyways, yeah. So she's been in things. I think she's pretty recognizable to, like, let's say, horror connoisseurs. If you're familiar with these movies that we just listed off. Anyways,
I think for outside of that, I think just for the Silent Hill fan, I think there's enough here to be to enjoy the film, and I
no, yeah,
think
yeah.
and I think at least when it comes to these type of films, that's all you could ask for, especially in 2006 when they were even shittier than they are now.
Let's
uh,
make a list of
yeah,
early
like
2000s video game adaptations real quick.
I,
Because
dude, I'd probably seen most of them too, which is the unfortunate part. I've seen every Resident Evil. They're all bad.
no, that's not it. Video game, not necessarily the best. Top 300 video games. No, that's not what I'm looking. Really, there's not like a list of like specific early 2000s video games. I mean, obviously there's
Early
okay. I guess
2000s.
obviously there's like the Resident Evil movies. Like those are predominantly from like the 2000s. Those I have seen all of those movies. I watched them in high school. I think I binged them all. This had to have been during COVID. Um, and yeah, I remember thinking the first one was okay, and then the rest of them just got worse and worse. So, uh, Laura Croft Tomb Raider. I've seen that one. That one
Yeah, that's
is.
not horror.
Are we talking about horror specifically?
I thought we were just talking about horror specifically because in 2003, have you ever played like the arcade House of the Dead game? That
No,
so House of the Dead is probably synonymously known as one of the worst, not only video game adaptations of all time,
the
but
worst movie.
films of all time.
Well, it's a Uwe Boll movie, so you gotta
Yeah, no, dude.
expect that.
No matter how much you think
Oh,
about it,
Doom came out in 2005. That's fucking crazy.
yeah, Alone in the Dark as well. I've played those games. House of the Dead got a sequel in 2005, unfortunately.
You know what else came out in 2006?
What?
Another Uwe Boll movie called Blood Rain.
Oh,
It's just
that's
one of the
right.
most atrocious fucking movies I've ever
I've
seen.
never seen it, but I've heard
You've
of
never
it.
seen it? Oh my
No.
god, it's so
No.
fucking bad. It's hilarious. You have to watch that movie. Yeah, it's just most of it is fucking Resident Evil. Does Max Payne count as a horror film?
No.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much it for.
Yeah, a lot of like the other projects that like I listed were like very indie IP horror stuff.
Mm,
Like stuff you would find on like Steam and shit, maybe like not on like an Xbox mainstream console.
yeah.
Um,
But honestly, if I'm being honest, out of all of these movies, I bet you Silent Hill is the only one that has any good reviews. Because I think Silent Hill has
no, the first Resident Evil actually has some pretty solid reviews. I don't see what those people see, but it gets some pretty solid reviews.
Oh, I'm thinking of the wrong thing. I guess it has a better audience review, but yeah, I guess it does have a
Well,
30.
that's the thing is I feel like they all start off pretty decent. You know, like I actually enjoy the first two Resident. As much as I say they're shitty, I enjoy watching them. Like they're good action, not B movie because it's slightly above that, like B plus, A minus, like schlocky territory. Where, dude, whenever I'm bored, sometimes during the Halloween season and I don't know what to watch, I'll tell you, Resident Evil Apocalypse, good time. Good time. Dude, it's literally just Milia Jokovic walking around essentially New York City blowing zombies up. Like the most ridiculous shit you could think of possible. Um but like that's what I think I like about Silent Hill is even though it takes itself seriously, it's not like serious where you could laugh at it, where the concepts and the ideas are just so wild and out there, which is something that I find funny with like the Resident Evil films is it leans so hard into the over the top aspect of like the stuff that isn't even in the games that it makes you laugh at it that I think is what inherently ruins those movies a little bit. And I enjoy not seeing that in Silent Hill. You see it in the second one, but don't see it in both.
I don't want to get too sidetracked into Revelation just yet, but I do want to say it is so obvious that Silent Hill Revelation wants to be Resident Evil so bad for just no reason. Like those movies aren't good, and I don't
I don't
understand.
yeah, I don't know why anyone wants to be those
I
films.
mean, they're profitable, which is probably why. And I think one of the producers on that movie was a producer for the Resident Evil movies. I think if I remember correctly, they were shooting one of those Resident Evil movies, and then right after that was done, they started working on Revelation. But well, I mean, in the 3D shit as well is also from Resident Evil series. Is That's all dumb as well. Just all the bad stuff in the Resident Evil movies is in Revelation, but none of the good stuff in the Resident Evil movies is in Revelation. So it's just like, ugh.
No, yeah. And I think when like you talk about Silent Hill, this first one, I do at least think about coming back to it in the future just because I think you get just this aura around the film that I do enjoy being in. Like I enjoy just the adventure of going through Silent Hill. It's kind of like that feeling I get when like you play one of these games. I don't You probably won't know the feeling, but when you like go through one of these games for the first time and like you first get introduced to like this big city center, and you don't know what's going on, but like you see all these freaky anomalies going on, and you're essentially like what Radha Mitchell is like in the beginning when she first enters Silent Hill, like just kind of snooping around, like inherently going up to dangerous people, not really giving a fuck. Like it doesn't make sense in the story because I would never go up to who was it? Not Lori, Deborah Kara Unger, who played Dahlia.
Oh
When she goes up to Dahlia in the beginning of the film, like in real life, you'd never do that, but in a video game, you would. You know
yeah,
what I mean? You want to find out more about what's going on around you, and I think that's what I like most about this film is I do feel like I'm at least playing the game, and it gives me that feeling of like mystery and awe.
yeah. I mean, I've never played any of the games. But I don't know. I guess this movie, or it feels more like a movie. That sounds dumb to say, but like if you're comparing this to Revelation and even some of the other video game movies we just talked about, like it's very obvious that at least with this one, they're trying to make it kind of fit into the parameters of what a movie is.
But you can at least feel like the formula of what the game is, right? Like
No,
how
no, no.
you
Yeah,
go
yeah,
from
yeah.
like
I understand what you're saying
no,
in
yeah,
terms
yeah,
of
yeah.
like, you probably wouldn't normally do this in real life, but I think the story kind of does a good job of justifying that as well.
Exactly.
And yeah, I mean, I've seen clips from the Silent Hill games, specifically Silent Hill 2, and so it does have the same um look to it, which is a feat in and of itself because most of the time we make fun of these movies because they have nothing to do with the actual games. And I criticized them a little bit for changing things from the game, and I only say that really because I've seen Revelation, and it is a dog shit movie. But also just given that this, in 2006, the first three games in the series were already out, and so obviously if you're looking at it in terms of like, oh, this is a franchise and yada yada yada, it doesn't really make sense to change essential things that you would probably know with the other two games being out, that you would need to include elements from those games that aren't set up by changing those things. But I mean, if you just look at so the first Silent Hill movie from 2006 just on its own, none of that matters. And I do think Silent Hill is a much better movie, and it's a lot more engaging. And it's fine to change things if it works in the movie. And I think on its own, a lot of those changes don't really affect the story, and they don't really change how you engage with it. And so as its own thing, I appreciate Silent Hill as a film. That's what I'm trying to say.
I just came across like a really interesting fact that I think it's really ironic that I just mentioned something like how it feels like it has a flow of the games to it. If you go down to like the writing section on the Wikipedia underneath Roger's photo, it says he wrote the script word by word while he was playing the games.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I think that's really interesting and funny at the same time that I think you could tell that, or at least I to a certain extent was able to feel like he was able to like adapt and mesh like a screenplay but a linear video game narrative at the same time, which is really hard. And I think I give a little bit more kudos to this film because it's it's not something that I think's been cracked with this film, but it's one of the closer films that I think, and it came out a long time ago. And I don't know, I enjoy it for that fact.
Mm. Yeah, sorry, I'm reading more.
No,
I'm
no,
reading
you're
more of this.
good.
It says, this is. I saw this and I couldn't help but not finish reading it because it is so incredibly stupid. So it says, a rough draft of the work was ready by October 2004. Nevertheless, due to the complete absence of male characters, the script was rejected by producers. Only after the script was modified to include Sean Bean's character and subplot was it approved. Avery recalled that as soon as they received this quote unquote stupid note from the studio, Gons got angry.
Well, it is a stupid note because I think that's my biggest complaint with this film is it's 2 hours long and the Sean Bean side plot amounts to nothing.
Yeah, I guess, this is a good time to talk about the ending of this movie. So I watched this last night, having never seen it, never played any of the games, not really knowing much about them. I knew Silent Hill 2 is like the more popular one, and I've heard things and seen things about that, but not a lot. But I knew going into it that these were, let's say, not one of the more recognizable video game adaptations. Like I've heard things about them, just most of what I heard is that they're not really good and people don't really like them. Um, and yeah, so I had no idea what I was walking into, and I threw it on last night, and it's decent pretty much throughout the entire film. And then I remember getting to the ending and I kind of just felt like, was that it? And I think I was also confused because I knew that there was a sequel, and I was kind of just sitting there like, this kind of doesn't feel like it lends itself towards a sequel.
And
Um,
it clearly doesn't. Like,
and I think one of the reasons is just because there's no real resolution to any of the stuff going on with like the family dynamic, I want to say. And part of that is, or a big part of that is because of the Sean Bean character. And don't get me wrong, I love seeing Sean Bean in a movie, and this is the one of the few where he doesn't die in the movie. But I just, I don't know, I just felt like there should have been more to his character. Like he kind of just spends most of the movie on his own, not really doing anything. Like him, you know, finding those like police records and revealing the stuff about the orphanage doesn't really add much, and we kind of just explain it later anyways to what's her name. Why can't I remember her name? The main character, what's her, Rose, sorry. um and then just kind of at the end, there's no resolution to him like looking for them, or even like figuring out what the whole deal with the cop dude is, and the orphanage lady. It just all felt very pointless. On top of the fact that they don't escape this other dimension or whatever, that really kind of annoyed me.
see, I don't know. You mentioned the how you were annoyed with the ending when we were talking about it before. I'm not saying it's like a good ending or great ending, but I kind of enjoyed it in a sense that it was different, and I like that not not no one really got a happy ending. I'm not like I'm trying to figure out a way to explain this because I like happy endings, but I don't always like happy endings, but I always don't like not happy endings. Does that make sense? I
I
think I
guess.
like it when I feel like it fits, and I feel like it not being like a happy ending with the mother and the daughter being stuck in Silent Hill essentially, and the father. I maybe I'm stretching, but to me, I felt like he came to by in the end, that he understood that she was there with him. I'm not like through some other force, because it happened enough times by the end where these really weird, random, I'll just call them wind occurrences, whenever she would like interact with something when he was in the same location, just in the real world.
Mm,
And to me, at least, I felt like he got some resolution in that she's still there. I'm not
okay.
saying that it is a
Perfect. Yeah.
massively perfect definitive conclusion, but I like it in the sense that he got some resolve in getting the satisfaction that he knows that she's still out there looking over him, whether that may be in death, in life, or whatever this in between may be.
Mm,
Um, and I like the sense that, because I read that by the end that not Dahlia, dark Alessa like absorbed into her daughter Alessa, like normal or good Alessa, I guess
yeah.
you could say. So I took it that as the fact that she kept them trapped there because she'd gotten what she wanted. And just gave Rose the satisfaction of going back to her house, because that's the only reason that I could explain like the road randomly like appearing and making way to perfectly her house, and getting that communication static at the very least to be able to say goodbye, because to me it felt like she knew exactly what was going on.
Rose did.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think if the movie, and I'm not saying that I want it to like spoon feed me with it, but I think if the movie gave a better idea of like what was, because when they get in the car and drive off and the road reappears, I assumed that that meant that they were being allowed to leave, because the way that I read it in the movie, just based on what we were told, is that it's confined to like the Silent Hill town, and part of that is because the road is um like destroyed on each side of the town, and so I just assumed that meant that it was confined to the town, and the movie doesn't do anything to reestablish that or something. And so when at the end, when the road reappeared and the vehicles working, everything, I was like, oh, they're getting to go home, and they can reunite with um, Sean Bean's character. And so to me, it felt like more like a slap in the face when it was revealed that it wasn't like that, and I kind of felt like I was misled by the movie not explaining the rules and sort of what was going on. Like I get all that stuff with the two like versions being united in the same body or whatever, and all that, and I understand what you're saying with the closure for Sean Bean being able to kind of like sense their presence and whatnot. I just felt that one, I think a happier ending was earned. I'm not saying that a more downbeat ending couldn't work. I just don't think it makes sense in the way that the world is established and how all the supernatural stuff works. But I think if they had just explained it a little more, then maybe I would be more accepting of the ending that we got. And that being said, too, you know, I think my opinion of the movie overall has greatly increased after watching the second one as well. And I'm sure like if I return to this movie, which I think I will, the first one, I might have different feelings on the subject, but
It's definitely an interesting film to go back to, I think, in the sense that it's a good adaptation of what I think the game is. Like, I think if you like, do you think as a person who never played the game, you get a good sense of what the game is just by watching the first Silent Hill movie?
yeah, definitely.
And see, for
I'm
me,
actually honestly more intrigued to play the games too after having seen the movie.
and I think that's a W, is like someone who plays video games and wants to see like these like type of things succeed, because I agree in the sense that the plot, the scripting isn't always working, but I think it all comes together at the end because I think it's just a good time. You know what I mean? It's not exhilarating, but I think it takes its time enough that you know what? I do enjoy coming back to this movie.
No, yeah, like I agree. I think my main thing, like the plot can kind of seem a little not all there, but I do like that we're kind of allowed to take our time with the main character and sort of figure out what's going on. It does have a very eerie atmosphere, and there's a lot of really good like horror stuff going on. It got to a point towards the end where I was kind of thinking like, maybe this could have been a little more gorier, and then it that woman like got her entire body torn in half and whatnot, and I was like, okay, never mind. I think I'll give that a pass. There's like there every once in a while there's like a weird like dialogue reading or something that is like I'm like, maybe you could have done that a little differently. I think towards the end, Rose's confrontation maybe could have been reworked a little bit, but I think overall, you're right, it does kind of add up, and there is a satisfaction in watching. Um, what's her name? What's the cult leaders? Christabella, like you know, get her due, and similarly with a lot of the other cult members, and I think the story does eventually come together pretty nicely in terms of like us finally getting an end to Rose's journey while also the revelation of what actually happened to Alessa and how all of this got started. Like that's really interesting and compelling. And so it the like all of the stuff that I've been complaining about wasn't enough to really make me not enjoy the movie, and I am like more willing to return to it and sort of see if my feelings have changed a bit.
It's just a little annoying because I feel like they really could have used like the real Silent Hill town subplot to like connect with how Roberto Campanella's like detective character was a part of like finding Anessa's burned body and how he got the burns on his hands. Like I thought there was a way to connect it a lot better instead of the way they did it. And I think that's one of the more frustrating parts of the story for me outside of like Sean Bean's inclusion and his part of the story, because it feels like they really had something there. And I like him as an actor. I think he's one of those guys you've seen in different things before. He's in a Resident Evil film. I think it's Afterlife. He's in. Regardless, I like him as an actor, and I thought he did a good job with what he was given for like the cop role. And between him and Sean Bean, I thought they could have had a really interesting dynamic that the film didn't want to stay on. So I wish they just cut that and made the film like 20 minutes shorter.
Yeah, I mean, um, it's hard to say because obviously, if you focus more on like the subplot stuff, then the movie would be longer. And it just to me it feels very obvious that they didn't want to include a lot of that stuff, and so they tried to not focus on it as much as possible. But that makes it feel kind of rushed and amount to not very much. I think there was a way to include it more, at least in terms of like having that be the catalyst for us sort of realizing and learning more about like the actual real life history of the town, because I think you don't really need a lot of that stuff while Rose is focused on trying to save her daughter. And you can keep the more like horror-ish stuff going on with the Silent Hill, like other dimension stuff, and then with the subplot you can be more like suspense and mystery of trying to figure out like what is actually going on with this town in terms of like what started it, if that makes sense. But I don't know, it's I guess it is what it is. Again, it wasn't enough to make me not enjoy the film, but it was one of the things that I kind of took notice of while watching it.
I guess this is a good time to transfer to the sequel, Silent Hill Revelations 3D, because
I feel
I
like
just
calling it a sequel is just
no,
disingenuous.
it's I think it's an insult to Silent Hill.
It's just so much of this
Also,
movie
wait, hold up.
is.
Sorry, I also got to mention this because this just came to me as like I made that transition, but there is also an unneeded side plot for like Alessa being raped by like the school janitor in the first
Oh,
one that like completely caught me off guard rewatching because I never seemed to remember that, and it felt so unnecessary because it was only seemed to be in the film to be like her life sucked tenfold.
oh,
What if her life sucked even more by getting like raped? And I'm just like, that's not like the way to do it. And I just want to mention that, like, get rid of that type of stuff, especially with children in your films, because it
yeah.
doesn't do anything, especially when you have nothing to say about it. You know,
Yeah,
it's just for me that was also something that like kind of caught me off guard in a bad way because I'm like, damn, bro, this kind of felt super unnecessary and kind of disgusting to a sense. Like, damn, you really, it feels like you're kind of baiting me to feel really bad at this point. If what you had shown me at this point you didn't feel like was enough to already make me feel bad.
yeah.
And with that, let's talk about how Revelations absolutely takes the ending of the first one and just totally does something different with it. Like it's just going and watching this right after the first one was kind of jarring to me.
Kind of jarring.
Okay, really fucking jarring.
I just want to say right off the bat that this movie, for me, is on the same level as Rob Zombie's Halloween. Like, that's how like, this movie is practically unwatchable. And, it doesn't happen very often, but as soon as I started this movie, I immediately just thought to myself, like, oh, this is one of those movies. In that you can immediately tell that it is going to be a very tough ride the entire runtime. And this movie did not disappoint. Every moment of it is just trying so hard to outdo the rest for how bad it is.
Yeah, it's like kind of absurd. I know the film only came out 6 years after, but it's like they totally changed up. Like they had this whole new fucking like amulet artifact and make it a part of like the last film that never existed. They come up with like the world's dumbest excuse about how Anessa gets back to her father. And like when I tell you I still can't explain it, I can't. It's just kind of utterly ridiculous.
It's implied that she used the amulet to do it, but it doesn't explain how that works because it's never brought up again. Like, we see two other characters when they use the amulet turn into like these monsters, and even the last time that it happens, um Sharon says a line when she gives it to Carrie Ann Moss's character, which I can't believe she was in this movie. She's not in it very long, so she probably, in her head, she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be on here for like a couple days and get my money and leave." But whatever. Anyways, yeah, Sharon says something of like, "Oh, I want to see like who you truly are" or something, and then immediately after touching it, she transforms. So in my head, that's the movie telling me that that's what that amulet does, but then it's also telling us that it has this side power to like help them
It,
escape.
the ability of the amulet is whatever the script needs it to do in the moment. Like that's its true
This
power.
is the stuff that really irritates me when you think about the way that the first one was made, because all of that is in the game. like based again off of the synopsis that I read, like the seal of Metatron or whatever.
Megatron.
That's
No,
that's
I'm
in
joking.
the Silent Hill 3 game. Like, the plot is very similar, and like all of these characters are included in it. It's just they're very slightly different in terms of like motivation and like some of the events that happen. But in this movie, it makes it so much worse because they're also trying to make it a direct sequel to the first film, which just doesn't work at all. Like, so much of what is in this movie actively contradicts the first movie.
Everything, just everything.
Yeah, like,
It's really weird how hard they go at trying to make us for like remember different things about what the first movie did. Like,
yeah.
it's just very weird.
And like it gets to a point where like they re-explain what happened to Inessa in this movie, and they use clips from the first movie to do it, but the backstory is different because the backstory matches the games now, where in the game they tried they were using her as a vessel to um I guess sort of reincarnate their god by having the Anessa give birth to it. But in the movie, that's not what happens. Like, just the motivations of everything is so wildly different from the movie because they're trying to match to the games, and so nothing makes any sense anymore. There's a very visual disconnect between the two movies because obviously Christoph Gans didn't return to direct the sequel, and instead it's somebody named MJ Bassett. I've
never heard of this guy. I've never heard of him.
I'm
about to see, like, what has he done? Death Watch, no one's seen. I've never
it's a
seen. Or
woman.
he did Red Sonja, or she did Red Sonja. Okay, I know
did
about that
she?
movie.
Oh, she directed that. She directed I don't know if you ever seen
a few
the
episodes
Solomon
of Ash
Kane.
versus Evil Dead.
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, it's not horrible.
Bro, no, sorry. She did a few episodes of Iron Fist. All credibility lost.
She did a couple episodes or she did an episode of Reacher.
She did a few episodes of an episode of The Equalizer.
NCIS, Tony and Ziva. Interesting. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. It just, the visuals, like the way the movie shot, the way that the color looks, and all of it just is completely different from the first movie. The CGI looks like shit.
Bro, it looks like digital slop. Just
this
put
is
on
something
screen.
that I didn't talk about in the first movie, but the first movie, the visual effects are actually pretty decent, like especially for the time. Like, yeah, some of it looks a little wonky, but to me it didn't really affect me because it kind of gave like the monsters a more otherworldly feel, which I think is is good. And so it made me it didn't come off as like, oh, that's really bad CG. It just was like, oh, that's a really creepy looking thing. And in this movie, like, even the fog effects are really bad. Like, I could kind of tell in the first one that it wasn't practical fog, but in this one you can really tell. Like, really tell.
Yeah, it's really like on standpoint when they do like that carousel with the fire effect around it a few times in this movie.
Oh yeah,
because it just looks awful. The editing when you get to the final fight is awful.
Oh god,
the editing throughout is awful.
Shit.
And you mentioned how in Silent Hill they could have like redone a few of the dialogues, like how people said it, or reworked the dialogue itself. But man, when I tell you, Kit Harington, every single line of dialogue in this film sounds like it's not coming out of his mouth properly. And I'm not talking about like being dubbed improperly. It just sounds like he's not sure if what he's saying is what is supposed to be said. He just,
I mean, that's fair. I can't even blame him for that, bro.
He just always sounds constantly confused with what he's saying. He's like, yeah, like with a question almost at the end of it. And I'm like, brother, what?
Yeah, obviously he's trying to fight his accent. Like, you can tell that he's not used to speaking with an American accent. And that's whatever. This is also a good thing to mention as well. Like, this movie is mixed horribly. Like, I kind of noticed it in the first film that, the dialogue was a little bit, lower.
Bro, I would lower all their dialogue if I didn't want to listen to any of it either.
This movie actually might be better as a silent film, but
it would be. Just put some
But
fucking music over it, please.
it's so annoying because literally it feels like you know the mixer went in, just took the entire fucking dialogue bus and just lowered it like I don't know. I want to say like a few decibels below what it should be, and so everything just sounds super low. I couldn't tell what anyone was saying. And then on top of that, the dialogue doesn't make any fucking sense either. Like, yeah, the dialogue wasn't anything to really write home about in Silent Hill from 2006, but like everything in this movie feels just it kind of feels AI generated. Like it's clearly written by someone who doesn't understand how people talk. And so people will say things kind of just out of the blue, or they'll, say things as a response to something, but it doesn't make sense as a response to something. Like I'm kind of just sitting there being like, how did you get to that? Like, what in your brains based on what is happening and what somebody else said made you say that? And it makes it so awkward when people are talking because you can tell that they're having trouble saying the dialogue because they also kind of don't
Don't
know
like it.
why it sounds like that. And it makes everything else around it just so much more unintentionally hilarious. Like every time Kit Harrington and I don't I guess I should refer to them as every time Vincent and Sharon are having a conversation, I can kind of tell what they were going for, but it doesn't, that effect is never reached. And so it just sounds really cringe whenever they're talking to each other.
Well, it also doesn't help that no one in this film has any ounce of chemistry with one another.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And I'm not even talking about romantic chemistry. Sean Bean and Adelaide Clems, who plays Sharon, and Christopher De Silva, the like awful father daughter relationship. When Kit and Adelaide, when Heather, when Sharon and Vincent, so many goddamn names. Sorry. When Sharon and Vincent kiss at the end, I'm like, dude, what?
Oh,
One of
dude.
the most awkward fucking things on this planet. The only one who actually looks like they cared was Malcolm McDowell. But that's because he's in it for 4 minutes. So I don't blame him.
It's just so baffling how every aspect of this movie just sucks ass so much. The characters are just nonsensical. Like everything they do, I'm just like, I don't understand why you did that. And it's just the movie's writing it to be as convenient as possible. And the revelation that, okay, first off, it takes 45 minutes for us to get to anything remotely Silent Hill related. I'm not really counting the times when like the monsters for some reason show up in the real world or whatever. That makes sense in the games because again, that happens in the games. But it doesn't make sense in the context of the movie because in the first one, to me it seems like again, it's only contained to the Silent Hill location. But in this movie, we're expected to just believe that all of a sudden, it can happen anywhere. And I guess the movie kind of tries to contrive that it's because of Sharon, but that's kind of a dumb excuse. And this goes into like the whole revelation that um, Kit Harrington is actually one of the cult members, and that's just
It's like the worst revelation. It's like so bad.
I feel like it could have worked, but this movie is trying to rush too much to get us to that point because at this point they haven't really spent any time together. In my head, the movie's only just begun because the conflict only started like 15 minutes ago, and all of a sudden they're acting like they've been on this long journey with each other. They've gotten to know each other so well, and he decides to reveal this to her, and she's understandably upset by it. And I'm just sitting there like, what the fuck am I watching? And why is this happening right now? Why is this important? Why is the movie structured like this? Like literally nothing has happened yet, and all of a sudden we're finding out one of the main characters of the movie is, this
dude that's been
cult
watching
member.
her his whole life.
Yeah,
Like,
he's been like stalking her and shit. And I'm just like, I don't understand what this has to do with anything right now. and it's literally only so that he can get captured immediately, and he can tell her like exposition stuff and give her the seal so that she can go find his fucking grandfather or whatever.
And his excuse makes it even worse because he keeps telling his mother, who's played by Carrie Ann Moss, Claudia Wolf, that she's not the devil. She's not this demon you guys keep saying. And I'm like, brother, how do you know that? First of all. Second of all, that's what they were doing that's what they were saying in the first one. So like stop regurgitating the things that did work in the first one to a certain extent and here and doing it in a far less superior way, because it feels like Revelation just has the opposite issue of what the first one had, as where they don't want to take any time in divulging into anything instead of taking too much time and divulging into a bunch of nonsensical parts. Because I think the first like maybe 25, 30, 40 minutes of this film should have been dedicated to setting up their relationship and her father's relationship, because I think that's what really just doesn't make any of this work, because so much of this film relies on the dynamics between the three of them, not together, but between like Sean Bean and Adelaide and Kit Harrington. And the three of them just don't work at all between any of them, that it's just so bad that when you get to the ending, Sean Bean's like, I have to go find your mother. I'm like, all right, bro, goodbye. Go. Go, 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 go. I don't want to see you anymore, bro. Like, I genuinely could care any less of a shit. And I don't know. I don't
Honestly,
like
by
it.
the end, I was just hoping that they would all die and the god would be reborn and evil would take over. Like, honestly, that would have been so much more interesting than anything the movie actually tried to pull. Like, all of the horror stuff is not scary. It's not even really like it's trying to be kind of like grotesque in a shocking way, but it just comes off as kind of laughable because obviously the first Silent Hill wasn't trying to do that. And I'm just like this. It's such a fundamental misunderstanding of what made the first movie work and what even is like scary. And that's the part of it that kind of reminds me of like Rob Zombie's Halloween, and that it's just trying to like shock the audience for no reason, and I'm kind of just left wanting more. On top of the fact that I know that the first one was actually pretty solid through most of it. And then I'm just constantly being reminded of just how nothing makes any sense. Literally every scene is dedicated to retconning something that happened in the first movie while also simultaneously trying to set up stuff that happens in the game. And then it all culminates in just a bunch of random conveniences happen. Like literally Sharon just happens to stumble across the asylum that she needs to get to, which also coincidentally Kit Harington has also been taken to, and and then the cult members take him into a room that clearly has a bunch of those fucking nuns in it, or not
Well, bro,
nuns,
that made
nurses
no
in it,
sense. Like, if they've been in
and
that room multiple times, how would you guys not know how to work in there?
yeah,
Let
and
alone.
so they take him in there. They know that the nurses are there. The nurses are clearly in there, and they just stand around waiting for them to be attacked. It didn't make any
And
sense.
screaming, telling them to stop when they know that the
That
trigger is
doesn't
making
work.
noise.
And
Like,
that's another thing too. Like in the first movie, they set it up as they respond to light, but in this movie, it's they respond to noise, and it's just it's a smaller example of how this movie just seems to deeply resent everything that happened in the first movie. And yeah, all of that just leads to a very clumsy climax that includes a 1v1 battle between Pyramid Head and whatever the fuck Carrie Ann
she
Moss
turns
turned
into.
into.
Well, it's funny because like all the main characters literally just move over to let them fight, and Carrie
They
Ann
watch
Moss
it too.
did not care, and there's no reason for Pyramid Head to just like interfere. Like none of it makes sense just to get this really unepic showdown.
It's
And
so badly choreographed.
Not only that, but then the 3D just ruins everything that the film could have had going for it in terms of like the gore and violence. Because I don't know if you noticed this going back to like the nurse scene, but when they were like chopping up one of the cultist guards, like they do this really bad 3D blood on the lens effect.
Oh
That is
yeah,
awful, dude. It is awful, and I cannot bear my fucking head that I know that they made it for 3D. But you
yeah,
guys cannot fucking tell me you did not watch this without 3D glasses at any point and be like, wow, dude, this literally looks like a fucking PNG image just fucking
I
laced
mean,
onto the screen.
see, this movie alone is the perfect example of why the 3D gimmick is so dumb,
It
because
needed to go.
it's just like my problem with the 3D, and we talked a little bit about this in like the Jesus, sorry, Final Destination video, because one of the two of those movies were made for 3D. One of them's a little more obvious than the other, but it's just with a lot of these movies that are made for 3D, and yes, it's a good thing that this one was actually shot for 3D and not had like a shitty post conversion. But not that it really matters, because most people can't watch the movie in 3D. Like you and me are watching this movie, fucking on YouTube or Amazon or something, and even on DVD you can't watch it in 3D. So it's painfully obvious that the movie was intended to be shown in 3D when you have stupid CGI shots where something fucking, comes at the screen and it looks really dumb, because all I'm thinking is like, oh, this was supposed to be in 3D and I was supposed to gasp in my seat of like, oh, it's
Oh,
coming
it's
at
on my
me.
eye.
Like it's so fucking dumb, and there's a way to do it where it's not like that. And the Avatar movies are a good example of something that was shot for 3D. And you know I don't think I mentioned this to you, but I saw the new Avatar in 3D, or in IMAX 3D, and I've never seen any of the other Avatar movies in 3D. And for the most part, I don't think I've ever actually seen a movie that was intended to be shot for 3D, except for like Coraline, I guess.
Huh, bro, I actually saw this movie in 3D when it came out.
You did.
Yeah,
I feel
it was
bad for you,
awful, bro.
but it's just with Avatar, it's not like it's things are flying at the screen or anything. It's just meant to enhance the visuals, and I did feel like things were more real. Like on top of everything being to such a quality that it already looks kind of photoreal, putting it into a 3D space made it be even more immersive. And that's something that these fucking studio executives don't understand. And they're just like, oh, just, slap the 3D label on it and get it out there and we can upcharge the price and shit. But it looks fucking stupid. Stop. I'm so sick of this 3D bullshit. I don't want to fucking see it.
Yeah, and it's really annoying because it feels like like intentionally put CG where it doesn't need to be. And I'm talking about like when they're walking around Silent Hill in particular. Like it feels like they put a filter around them, and there's this weird haze around all the actors' faces when they're walking outside in the streets. And like
But
I
it's
think
because they're trying to blend the fog effects.
like but like they don't need to do that. That's the problem. Like I don't know why they're trying to blend anything, especially when the first film had already done it. Like it's very weird to me that like I don't know. I just hate looking at a fucking Sean Bean at the end of the film who looks like he's stuck in a freezer. You know, like it's really like unfortunate because the first film just adds so much aura to the town itself and gave you such a great idea and vibe about what this town was and could have been. But then this film just does none of that and makes the
Yeah, it's
town
all
just look like
absent.
this all absent, like fucking generic, like CG snowflakes falling down. Like they could have been CG in the original, but the way they blended it into the scenes was just so much better than any 5 minute ounce of effort they put into this film.
Yeah, and it's really inexcusable too, because though there's not a lot of those scenes in this movie. Like I mentioned earlier, it takes 45 minutes for us to actually get to the titular fucking Silent Hill town, and they're not in like the whole like foggy, hazy parts very long. So to me, it just feels like the people who were involved were just like, we don't need to try that hard because it's not really that important. But it is a very important aesthetic, and it really bugs me when I watch it, and I'm like, this doesn't feel like it did in the first one. And again, there's no excuse for it because it's not very long. There's few
It
and
just needs
far
to get
scenes in
through.
between, and they're not. Those scenes are very brief in and of themselves, but I just can't help but tell that this looks like shit, and it's really this movie is just very frustrating to watch.
Yeah, especially because going back to like the way we were talking about how like the ending of Silent Hill was, it doesn't always need to be happy, but it doesn't always need to be sad at the same time. Like this is where I feel like it being happy is actively going against the film because I hated it. I
Well,
hate
it's not
no,
earned.
it's not earned. Kit Harrington, fucking that motherfucker should have died 30 minutes ago, 50 minutes ago, an hour and a half ago. Like the second they heard that guy like try to say a single line, they shouldn't even like had this role in the film anymore. Cause that's the thing. His character feels very just like he doesn't do anything. He's just there to experience everything else.
Yeah,
He
pretty
has,
much. I mean, he
he has
spends
no
most of the
input on the
movie.
plot. He doesn't change anything. He doesn't affect the character's mind or opinion. He's just kind of there to be like, "Hey, I'm this person
I'm the love
that's
interest.
associated." Yeah, it's just like I'm just here to be the generic person you need when the plot needs me to be that person.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think he's literally only here. I mean, aside from his character being in the games, I guess.
But like he didn't need to be in the story.
Yeah, I mean, like the only thing he does is he kisses the female protagonist, which I guess they had to include for some reason because the executives were probably like, the lead character is a woman, but she doesn't like get with someone like that. That needs to change. That's literally what it feels like, and it's dumb that I can even accurately theorize the mindset of these fuckers while they were making this stupid ass movie.
Well, you could tell, like, dude, I think it's funny because we talk so much shit about people that use Chat GPT for films nowadays and shit like that. But I guarantee you, if this film came out today, this film would be ranced and laced with accusations of being like Chat GPT produced.
Well, it feels like it.
That no, that's why I mention it because this just feels like no one actually made it, and it feels like someone put a bunch of ideas into like a bin or something, and this is what was spit out.
Yeah, no, 100%. It definitely feels like someone we went into Chat GPT and was like, write me an outline for a Silent Hill adaptation or whatever in
And
in a screenplay.
I find it really ironically funny too with Sean Bean in this film that at the end he decides to go and look for his wife when, brother, what have you been doing for the last 10 years, 10, 12 years? Did you not once attempt to try and find her? Like, I don't know. It's just very weird that all of a sudden this dude has this urge. Like, I know you're in Silent Hill now, but it's weird that he never attempted to go back to try and be in Silent Hill. I know he wanted to protect his daughter, but if they're coming out after him, I don't get the importance of needing to be hidden if the threat's just gonna find you anyway. Go
Mm.
into the belly of the fucking beast and you handle that shit like a man. No, that's a joke.
I don't know. I'm not really annoyed about that. I'm just kind of annoyed that the whole concept of them not being able to escape in the first fucking place, because it's implied that Kit Harington and sorry, I keep using the actor's name, Vincent and Sharon are able to just walk out of this other dimensions of Silent Hill. So that brings into question, like, why did they need the amulet in the first place? Why couldn't she come with, like, it's just all of these questions I have that I didn't really have after watching the first one, and now I'm just even more confused. On top of the fact that this movie just introduces a lot of characters and concepts that were just not present in the first movie. Like, where did this fucking sister of Christabella come from? And why does everything look different now? Like just the
Why
way
is
that the
there a whole separate cult all of a sudden? Like,
yeah, and like the way that what's her name? Carrie Ann Moss, Claudia. The way that like Claudia looks in terms of like from a design standpoint just doesn't match with the way that anyone looked in the previous movie. I'm really confused at why there's such a lack of tonal cohesion between any of the visuals when this is supposed to be a sequel to the first movie.
yeah, I think they should have just bombed this movie in the editing room and just calling it a day and cut the L's what they could. But I will say these films like together made a good amount. Together they both like the first and Revelation cost like 70 million, and they together they combined for 156, and they both broke even in the box office. So you know what? Even though the film was kind of shitty, it made it back. So I guess there is some credit to be had there. That's hard to do. You know, that's hard to do.
I guess.
Hey, dude, when the movie's made for 25 million budget in 2012 for this type of film and it makes it back, that's a W. Because this movie should not have made it back.
No, it
Um,
shouldn't have.
but do you want to get into final wrap ups?
Yeah,
All right. Do you have your letterbox open or no?
I do.
All right, you go first.
All right, I gave Silent Hill a tentative 3 out of 5 stars. I think it really was just those things that I mentioned that I was not entirely sold on, like some of the dialogue, the way that the ending isn't really explained, that kind of messed with me. So yeah, it's subject to change. I wouldn't give it higher than a 3.5, and I probably wouldn't give it any lower than a 3. But I'm more interested in returning to this movie in particular, and then seeing the new one coming out, with the director returning and whatnot. For Silent Hill Revelation 3D from 2012, I gave a 1.5 stars, and my review was, "What an exhausting movie."
Yeah, no, that's a great explanation of what the fucking film entails by the time you're done. With Silent Hill, I give it a 2.5 stars out of 5. Uh, my review's a ton of whiny bitches in a town they're not supposed to be speaking in. Kind of crazy, but like I agree with all the sentiments you were saying about the film with the dialogue, all this and that. I didn't mention this when we were talking about it before, but the editing in Revelations is so bad that it makes the first one look good, but the first one is not edited well by any means necessary. And I only say that because the instant she gets into Silent Hill in that first film, they try to do this really jarring like edit effect where the camera's like twirling all around the actor to give like this paranoid lost effect, but someone forgot to tell the DP, the director, somebody that you're supposed to do it shooting from a different like perspective and angle different times, because they just go from like picture the front of the main actress as this 180-degree angle. They stay within that 180-degree angle, and then they just like motion or shift the camera or pan it to the right. And they just like rapidly edited that together 5 to 10 different times. And it actively made me cross eyed. And I'm not like saying that as a joke, but it literally like actually bothered me. But with Revelations, I gave it half a star out of 5, all the same reasons. I realized why I never came back to this movie. It's not good. The acting's atrocious. The writing's awful. The directing's pretty bad. I hate to just shit on visual effects artists, but the VFX are fucking atrocious in this. I'm sorry, guys, but they are. I'll leave it at that.
Well, I mean,
What are we?
sorry,
No, no, no.
it's bad when the movie that came out 6 years after has worse visual effects.
Dude, it's like it's criminal. They should be thrown in jail. But I think it's less the visual effects and the director knowing how to use it. Because in
Yeah,
Silent Hill, it felt like a lot of the visual effects heavy stuff was held in like heavy shadows or super dark spaces that I think just worked for the atmosphere of the movie, that you don't think too much about it, that I think just worked towards it inherently, that the in Revelations, everything's just goddamn bright for some reason. It's just like all,
Yeah.
the saturation just turned up 200%.
Yeah.
But without further ado, Leo, what are we watching next week?
All right, next week we are we're going back to a little more Sam Raimi. We're gonna watch Drag Me to Hell. Sam Raimi's new movie is coming out. I think it's called Send Help, if I'm remembering correctly. Yes. It is coming out on January 30th in the US, and so we figured we would take a look back on some of Sam Raimi's other work, outside of, everyone knows him for like Evil Dead and Spider-Man and whatnot. So we're gonna look at Drag Me to Hell. I've seen parts of this movie, but I'm excited to watch it all the way through and come back and let you guys know if it's any good or not.
No, yeah, I'm excited to go back and watch it. Last time I saw it was in the theaters, and it's got one of the like, not batshit, but it's got a really good ending that I'm curious to see what you think about.
I do know how it ends. That's one of the parts that I've seen.
No, bro.
I've seen the
No.
goat scene, and I've seen the ending.
That's unfortunate, but another great Justin Long performance in that film. But regardless, thank you guys for coming out and watching the films with us this week. And let us know down below what you thought of Silent Hill and Silent Hill Revelations 3D. Jesus Christ, that is a tongue twister. Without further ado, we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.